Oh, they have the internet on computers now.
Homer, Bill Gates is here.
Bill Gates? Billionaire computer nerd Bill Gates?
Bill Gates has an estimated net worth of $98 billion. If he spent $1 million a day, it would probably take him more than 268 years to spend all of his money.
Mr. Simpson?
You don't look so rich.
Don't let the haircut fool you. I'm exceedingly wealthy.
Do you know what is the world's second richest person's worst fear?
I don't want my brain to stop working.
After coronavirus appeared in our lives, people started having different opinions about Bill Gates. One of the biggest reasons was his speech on the TED Talk in 2015.
Today, the greatest risk of global catastrophe doesn't look like this. Instead, it looks like this. If anything kills over 10 million people in the next few decades, it's most likely to be a highly infectious virus rather than a war.
Also, many questions are asked about pandemic tabletop exercise called Event 201. On October 18, 2019 in New York, hosted by the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security in partnership with the World Economic Forum and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Now let's see the scenario of Event 201.
A new coronavirus spread silently within herds. Gradually, farmers started getting sick. Infected people got a respiratory illness with symptoms ranging from mild flu-like signs to severe pneumonia. The sickest required intensive care. Many died. Experts agree unless it is quickly controlled, it could lead to a severe pandemic, an outbreak that circles the globe and affects people everywhere.
The scenario ends at 18-month point with 65 million deaths. The pandemic is beginning to slow due to decreasing numbers of susceptible people. And it will continue at some rate until there's going to be effective vaccine or until 80 to 90% of the global population has been exposed. According to the South Morning China Post on November 17, 2019, a 55-year-old individual from Hubei province may have been the first person to have contracted COVID-19. That's why some people think it's a little odd that the same guy who led Event 201 just a few weeks before the first outbreak in China, telling everyone what to do and when it's safe to go back to normal life. After organizers wrote the statement about their pandemic exercise, they explained that it was not a prediction. On March 24th, Bill Gates was hosted by the head of TED, Chris Anderson, on TED Connect series.
Our focus, like this self-swab thing, nobody had done that before. People thought it wouldn't work. We were quite sure it would work. And so that for the globe is a huge thing.
Bill said that they're working on the test that people could do on their own at home without having a doctor or nurse shove a swab all the way to the back of their throat, which hurts a lot but also is a risk of them coughing and potentially spreading the disease to that health worker. And now about the vaccine.
If everything goes perfectly with the RNA approach, we could actually beat the 18 months. We don't want to create unrealistic expectation.
18 months?
What is love?
We will get out of this, and then we will get ready for the next epidemic.
Did I get it right? Next epidemic? Okay.
I don't know when you're not there.
And how are we going to live, Mr. Gates?
Eventually, what we'll have to have is certificates of who's a recovered person, who's a vaccinated person, because you don't want people moving around the world where you'll have some countries that won't have it under control. Sadly, you don't want to completely block off the ability for those people to go there and come back and move around.
But many people find it weird that non-official person with no medical degree seems to be the world's leading health expert on the coronavirus. Though he's super smart and experienced because he has been cooperating with the world's leading scientists and doctors for years.
Bill is a multiprocessor. He'll be reading something else but then processing at the same time. It's chaos.
Makes a framework in his mind, and then he starts slotting in the information.
If something doesn't line up, he gets really frustrated. It's scary.
But when Bill stills himself, he can pull ideas together that other people can't see.
The best investment I've ever made. This is Bill Gates' words about Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization, Gavi. Since its inception in 2000 through the end of 2018, Gavi helped lower-income countries to prevent more than 13 million future deaths through its support for routine immunization programs and vaccination campaigns.
20 years ago, the children of the world weren't getting the vaccines they needed. The children at most risk in poor countries were the ones who were getting the least vaccines. And so we needed to find the resources to get countries to adopt the vaccines so that every child would be protected against diarrhea, pneumonia, and other killing diseases.
ID 2020. Gavi is one of the founding partners with Microsoft, Rockefeller Foundation, and others. As we know, in September 2015, all United Nations member states adopted the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, including their commitment to provide legal identity for all, including birth registration, by 2030. According to the World Bank statistic, nearly 1 billion people worldwide live without identity document. ID 2020 announced to launch their first certification mark for digital identity at the 2019 World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland.
Is thinking about the importance and the need for digital identity for people who are on the move. And for many of these people whose identity is captured by a piece of paper that is easily lost or stolen, you may know that we, along with a number of others, were founding members of ID 2020. The goal here is not to have one particular use of technology or one particular application, whether it be a fingerprint or an iris scan or facial recognition, but to, in essence, build a set of standards by which digital identity could be developed in many different use cases using many different kinds of platforms and many different kinds of applications.
Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation was founded in 2000. They believe by doing these things, focusing on a few big goals and working with their partners on innovative solutions, they can help every person to get the chance to live a healthy and productive life. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is the second largest funder, which provides 9.8% of the WHO's funds. Also, you can see Gavi Alliance as WHO's donor.
Family planning is crucial anywhere, any community you're in around the world, because if a woman can decide if and when to have a child, she's going to be healthier and her child's going to be healthier. It's one of the longest standing pieces of global research, health research we have, that there are 200 million women who are asking us for family planning. They want contraceptives, and the world hasn't delivered that to them.
With the support of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in the form of approximately $17.9 million in grant funding to date, and the potential for up to additional $2.5 million in grant funding in 2020, microchips have been developing an implantable, long-acting, reversible contraceptive application of the technology. Bill is working on vaccines, cares about people, but also cares about climate change.
I've put hundreds of millions of dollars into an advanced nuclear reactor design. Nuclear power is extremely compact. Each reaction gives you 1 million times more energy than burning coal. So it should be capable of being very cheap and also very safe to give you a key tool to fight climate change.
We all know that population growth is inextricably linked to climate change. And saving lives and climate change don't really work well together. And that's the fact. Let's check the TED video Innovating to Zero of 2010.
If you sum up the CO2 that gets emitted, that leads to a temperature increase. And that temperature increase leads to some very negative effects. Thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to zero, and that's going to be based on the number of people, the services each person's using on average, the energy on average for each service, and the CO2 being put out per unit of energy. So let's look at each one of these and see how we can get this down to zero. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to zero. That's back from high school algebra, but let's take a look. First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%. If you gave me only one wish for the next 50 years, I can pick who's president, I can pick a vaccine, which is something I love, or I could pick that this thing that's half the cost with no CO2 gets invented. This is the wish I would pick.
Bill gave an answer to the question, does saving more lives lead to overpopulation?
One that's come up for a long time is, as we make the world healthier, is the population going to get so big that feeding everybody and maintaining the environment is going to be impossible. Here we can see a chart that looks at the total world population over the last several hundred years. And at first glance, this is a bit scary. We go from less than 1 billion in 1800, and then 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7.4 billion where we are today is happening even faster. So Melinda and I wondered whether providing new medicines and keeping children alive, would that create more of a population problem? What we found out is that as health improves, families choose to have less children. And this effect is very, very dramatic. We find that in every country of the world, this is repeated. That the faster we improve health, the faster family size goes down. And so we can feel great about saving those lives.
We give you facts and you analyze it. I'm Ellie and thanks for watching.